Of the three disads you listed, which do you think would be one of the stronger arguments? Or is it just all personal style?
You know, it's kind of however it goes down. A couple things I would potentially do. I think here are the best packages of arguments. Obviously, topicality is a 2 NR in and of itself, and an important debate to have, and a good way to get the 2 AC and 1 AR to spend some time. Second way, I think, would be a Japan counterplan with a piece of evidence that makes a comparative distinction between the launch technologies of Japan and whoever the AF uses, all right? So to say that Japan is, number one, more accurate at the way they place satellites, they have less losses, and some argument that Japan or whoever else you're using has environmentally better launch technology as well. That U.S. rockets, for some reason, deplete the ozone, for instance, but Japanese ones don't, or don't as much. So there's a net benefit there. Space militarization also becomes a net benefit to that then, in the sense that it would advance Japanese launch technology and not United States launch technology in the way that the affirmative would. All right, because chances are for a lot of these things, the United States, like big SPS, stuff like that, the U.S. would almost assuredly need to develop a new heavy launch capacity, basically, and one that was very much faster, probably reusable, all things that would aid space militarization. The space junk stuff only, that applies pretty equally to everyone. That's more about ghost versus squall. So play it by ear, you know, based on what your evidence says. Obviously, if you have a good solvency card for the particular act or whatever, that's the way to go. International fiat is obviously the big issue, so that's why I'm reluctant to say, like, oh, absolutely go with the CP. You know, when there's a theory debate like that where a lot of judges are sometimes just like, no, then, you know, you don't want to make that, like, strat. You know, have 1 and 1A in that instance. Like, make it work without the CP2.
Okay.
There's more questions in this zone. Did I answer them? I'm sorry?
Are there any satellites that are exempt from causing problems? Like those problems?
The militarization link, honestly, is kind of stupid. As are most links in debate arguments. So, to tell you the truth, honestly, if there's like 3,000 satellites up there and it hasn't caused like nuclear war because of space militarization yet. Frankly, I don't think putting up another 100 solar-powered satellites are going to cause space militarization. So, as far as the space militarization, honestly, I think almost all the satellites are, except for the ones that are actually military. But that doesn't mean you can't win a link. Space junk, no, they all cause junk, especially if they move into one of the more crowded regions. We're running out of good geosynchronous spots over the United States without getting too close. Although, if you position it properly in geosynchronous orbit, you can put them pretty close together. Launch-related disads, obviously, you got to launch it, period. It doesn't matter, so, no. Research satellites, more exempt from topicality problems. Can definitely win an exploration. You're both exploration and development. You can get out of that whole dilemma and not worry about it too much. Yeah.
Some of these affirmatives have sort of small advantages. Don't link to the huge distinctions in the areas. What's the good way to sell something like that?
Well, it depends what you mean by small advantages that don't link to extinction. I would argue that in terms of capital T truth, global warming is a much better link to an extinction impact than is almost any other affirmative. All right. So, although at this point, the science on global warming, I mean, like, either you believe it or you don't. More science is not going to change your mind. But some of the different environmental things get to very big impacts. I think the way to sell it is just from the standpoint of saying that these are just the typical way of sort of like systemic versus probabilistic impact kind of thing. Do those words, does that mean anything to you when I say it? Yeah, well, for instance, environmental impacts ought to be weighed differently than war impacts or something like that, where it's either we're like a war impact or like a nuclear war impact, for instance, is yes, no question. Like, we either detonate nuclear weapons or we don't. Whereas the level of severity, you know, like, there is global warming, the question is how much and how severe is it? So movement within that range is meaningful. You can't answer it with a yes, no, on-off button. Which means that the way you sell that is that different satellite technologies allow for increased precision. That's more meaningful because it overall lowers the risk of certain things happening, be that sea collisions, safer plane flight and stuff like that, that there is a increased level of risk present in the system, which necessitates a different type of risk assessment. All right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, cool. I mean, and I can go on and on more about that. I think, ask me one more if you want about like different risk assessment stuff. I don't want to kind of get too off on there. I saw another hand somewhere. Yeah.
You said the U.S. didn't have ASAT technology, but we...
No. We've got a ton of ASAT technology. We don't have it deployed right now, technically. That we're willing to admit. We've definitely shot down satellites. No, I mean, for sure. It was banned under the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty, all right? Before that, we used to do it all the time, all right? And, but we pulled out of the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty under the Bush administration because Bush and Rummy and Cheney were really into NMD, and so they didn't want that pesky treaty we had signed and committed to stop them. So we could go with runaway ASAT technology if we really wanted to, but that's really scary if we start getting the capability to shoot down satellites. Because let's say we have a spy satellite up there that's part of our early warning network, and it goes offline. All right? Questions. Number one, did it get shot down by Russia or China? All right. Question number two, was it literally shot down, or was it knocked out with some sort of electronic jamming or something? Number three, why would you want to stop someone's early warning system unless you're about to do something very mean to them? All right, and so once ASATs start happening and become possible and deployed, what's the threshold then? If our early warning system goes down, or a bunch of our spy satellites go down, does that mean that an attack is imminent? Does that mean that we should counterstrike immediately in a massive counter value or counter force throw of all of our nuclear weapons before they all get destroyed on the ground, before they even get up in the air? 30 seconds matters in that situation, and I don't trust a lot of people that are in charge of those things. So the number of ways you can get rid of potentially nasty things, there's just people, it's like Dr. Strangelove. There's a guy out there who's just waiting to do it. He's living his whole life for it. Don't give him away that excuse to do it. I'm winning the argument, basically. Which is why we shouldn't pull out of things with the ABM treaty. But yeah, anyway.
Right.
There was another hand. Thank you very much.